Hello and welcome to Fight News Now Extra. I'm John Pollock. We've got all of today's headlines with John Ramdeen and Robin Black stopping by to chat. Today we're going to take a look at the UFC's heavyweight division and what Alistair Overeem's plans are, a potential bout for the UFC 191 pay-per-view, and more on today's edition of Fight News Now Extra. Ariel Helwani reported on UFC Tonight that a heavyweight bout between Frank Mir and Andrei Arlovski is in the works for UFC 191 on September 5th in Las Vegas. Arlovski has won his last 5 fights, including 3 since returning to the UFC, most recently stopping Travis Brown at UFC 187 in May. Mir has won 2 consecutive fights and is coming off a knockout win over Todd Duffy from earlier this month. The UFC has added a heavyweight bout between Sean Jordan and Ruslan Magomedov to the UFC 192 pay-per-view card. That one is set for October 3rd in Houston, Texas. Magomedov has fought twice in the organization with wins over Victor Pesta and Josh Copeland, while Jordan has won his last 3 fights with wins over Jack May, Jared Cannonier, and Derek Lewis. And our final bit of UFC heavyweight news focuses on Alistair Overeem, as it was reported on UFC Tonight that Overeem was in talks to fight at UFC 191 in September, but it appears Overeem will instead be waiting and wants to get a fight with former heavyweight champion Junior Dos Santos. JDS has not fought since last December after winning a war against Stipe Miocic. This Saturday night, it might not be a war in the main event, but Ronda Rousey will defend her bantamweight title against Bethe Correia, and we are live at 7 p.m. Eastern Time with a 1-hour preview show getting you set for the fights from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And we are joined by Robin Black and John Ramdeen's shirt to chat about today's UFC heavyweight news, because there's quite a bit of it. At the top, we were discussing Frank Mir, who could be coming back on September 5th to fight Andrei Arlovski. If this fight gets made today, this fight will happen in 5 weeks. I think this is a crazy turnaround for Frank Mir, who just fought this past month against Todd Duffy. I think if you're getting ready for an Andrei Arlovski, I would want a full camp. I think that this very much favors Andrei Arlovski on such a quick turnaround.
Possibly, but to Frank Mir, he says he's training smarter now. He's doing the right things, and I think if Frank Mir wasn't feeling good going into this fight with Andrei Arlovski, there's no way he would have taken it, but he felt sharp after that victory over Todd Duffy. He said, now I just look at fights one at a time and just see how my body's feeling. And, Frank Mir is no spring chicken. You want to get as many fights as humanly possible in as you're getting close to the end of your career. And I think this fight makes sense. If he goes out and gets a victory over Andrei Arlovski, right now the heavyweight division.
No, then Andrei Arlovski would probably get a title fight.
Yeah, maybe. That's
based on the current. I'm trying to figure out the formula now. Maybe that's Mir's idea. I'm going to lose to Arlovski,
get the loss, and then
I will get the title shot. Very smart thinking.
Right, but I think if Frank Mir can go out there and get a victory, he's definitely in the mix. An interesting matchup. 2 jiu-jitsu guys who have improved in the stand-up department. Frank Mir, a former heavyweight champion. So the story is there. If he can get it done, who knows?
One thing about that Frank Mir cat, he's really smart.
Yeah, he is.
He's very, very smart. And he's smart in the way that he's looking at fighting right now. He's kind of like that Dan Hendo Henderson kind of approach, where you look and you're like, what have we lost with age? Well, we might be a little slower. We might have more of a dad bod than we used to have. Et cetera, et cetera. But you use less energy, you fight smarter, you train smarter, you approach it all like, I'm the experienced guy who knows better what to do in these situations. And guys like that don't need to necessarily work as hard. They play to that older fighter mentality. And at heavyweight, a guy with 5 weeks, Mir is going to get from really, really fit for his age to really, really, really fit for his age, and he can do that in 5 weeks. I don't think he's going to be ever in elite superstar cardio shape ever again. I don't think that's the goal either. I think quite wisely he realizes he doesn't have to work as hard as he used to work, and I think if somebody's going to make this work, it's Frank Mir.
As we look ahead to whatever's going to happen, that heavyweight championship fight, whatever it's going to be, there's a lot of options out there. Alistair Overeem, he wants to fight Junior Dos Santos.
Does he really?
Dos Santos and Stipe Miocic, they are kind of the 2 contenders for that title fight. Now, logic would say, hey, Dos Santos beat Stipe Miocic. He should probably be the next one in there. There's the wild card of Fedor, which we were discussing earlier. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. You are selling fights to people, and the idea of Fedor coming back and you put him against Verdum, that's the rematch. There's an argument to that, and that'll upset a whole segment of MMA fans. But that's an option too.
That is an option. As long as you show the highlights of Fedor beating Minotauro and knocking out Andrei Arlovski and having the first fight with Fabrizio Verdum, it's an easy sell. You'll have some of the best. You'll have promos of Ronda saying Fedor is the greatest of all time. Cain Velasquez saying Fedor is the greatest of all time.
What's Dana going to say? Is he just going to flip it now?
Yeah,
It's
of course
he was one of the greatest
ever. Of course
ever.
he. That's the game. You're trying to
promoters
sell
do.
fights. That's right.
Yeah.
But I think right now it's an interesting time. It's just what story is the biggest and what will bring the most eyeballs to the heavyweight division. And there are a couple of storylines.
Where do you weigh in on this, Robin? As someone that I have seen you drastically change kind of your just approach to title fights and how they are presenting fights. I mean, at the end of the day, they're a business that's making money, and I do not begrudge them making the fights that the most people want. At the same time, I mean, we are just seeing everything all over the map. Some that I would argue, I don't even know if Carlos Condit challenging for the welterweight title is necessarily a blockbuster fight.
I'm in it. I want that
Great
fight. That's the fight I need to see.
Great fight,
Yeah.
but in terms of a major blockbuster pay-per-view, I mean, it's a fight.
I'm in. It's a good, crazy fight.
Yeah, I really do like that fight. I've kind of mellowed with age in some ways. I get angry about weird stuff, but then other stuff I'm sort of like, well, this is where we are, this is where we are. And one of those things is none of it makes any sense. I love fighting. I love the chance to see really great fights every few weeks. I can't make sense of none of it. So I'm just like, well, why not? While we're at it, while we're discussing it, Fedor, we can get Ronda saying he was one of the greatest of all time. We can show all those old highlights. Why don't we just get Mike Tyson to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world too? We can show old Mike Tyson moments. I mean, Fedor lost, I don't know, a bunch in a row. He slowed down. He was very special in that ability, his mental ability and his ability to time that destructive right hand of his. Over time, you'll slow down and you'll lose some fights. Show all the old highlights you want, but Fedor cannot win the UFC heavyweight championship right now. He's too old.
Last question. I want to throw out Ramdeen here because we're almost out of time here. Shogun Rua going into this rematch with Antonio Rogerio Nogueira. We know that he is now back working with Rafael Cordeiro. What do you expect out of Shogun this weekend? Because that's not getting a whole lot of discussion.
Well, I think if Shogun's going to be successful, I think he's got to do what he kind of did in that first fight. Try to abuse Little Nog as much as humanly possible and engage him on the ground. But the rules are different than Pride. So I think he's going to try to keep it active, but Nogueira is going to be a good counter-puncher, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Shogun's jiu-jitsu on display.
The rules are different? Even there's no head stomps, leaping head stomps and soccer kicks?
You can just blame, hey, I thought this was Jungle Fight on Saturday. All right, for Robin, Ramdeen, I am John Pollock. More Fight News Now Extra is coming your way. Stay tuned.